When you stop using smart devices for 30 days, you are not just turning off a set of screens. You are removing an entire layer of stimulation that has been wrapped around your nervous system for years. Notifications, endless scrolling, tiny hits of social approval, late-night messages, and early morning news all disappear at once. What unfolds inside you over the next 4 weeks is not random. It follows a fairly predictable biological arc. At the beginning, the change feels mechanical. You put your phone in a drawer, shut down the tablet, leave the smartwatch on the table. But your nervous system does not believe you. For years, it has learned that a buzz in your pocket could mean novelty, threat, opportunity, or reward. Sensory neurons in your skin, your hearing, your eyes have been trained to treat these devices as priority channels. You have essentially built a reflex loop between the outside world and your attention. In the first days without devices, this loop still fires even though the trigger is gone. Many people experience phantom vibrations, the sensation that something in the pocket just moved. Others keep glancing at imaginary lock screens or reaching for a device that is no longer there. This is not superstition. It is a trace of neuroplasticity. Your brain has rewired itself so thoroughly around these patterns that it briefly continues the behavior without input. Along with these ghosts of habit comes a rise in unease. The brain does not like losing a familiar source of prediction. Smart devices continuously fed you small chunks of information. Even when the content was stressful, the pattern was stable. Without that constant drip, your stress system can spike. Cortisol may edge upward as your brain asks a simple question over and over again. What am I missing? Is there a threat out there that I am not seeing? You may feel restless, more irritable, oddly empty. Boredom, which used to last a few seconds before you opened an app, now stretches out into long minutes. This is the withdrawal phase, but it is not the same as withdrawing from a drug in a strict medical sense. Instead, you are withdrawing from a pattern of reward and distraction. Each swipe used to deliver a small, unpredictable burst of novelty, and that pattern trains dopamine systems in your midbrain. When the pattern suddenly stops, dopamine signaling shifts. Your baseline feels lower. Activities that once seemed mildly interesting now feel flat for a while because they are no longer competing with the rapid, high-contrast stimuli of a feed. In the first week, this miscalibration is obvious. You sit down to read a page and your attention fractures after a few lines. Your eyes search for links, pop-ups, or highlights that never appear. Long, continuous text demands a form of focus your brain has not practiced. At the same time, your inner world starts to get louder. Thoughts that were previously drowned out by the constant hum of information rise to the surface. Worries, unresolved decisions, old memories, random fragments all crowd in. It is tempting to see this as a sign that something is wrong. In reality, it is a sign of capacity returning. The channels you used to fill with external content are now available for internal processing. Physically, subtle changes begin as well. Without the blue light of late-night screens, the signals to your circadian clock shift. The retina is no longer blasted with bright artificial light close to bedtime. Melatonin, your darkness hormone, can rise more naturally. Sleep onset may still be rough in the first nights. You are used to collapsing into bed after scrolling. But gradually, as the brain stops expecting stimulation at midnight, the transition into sleep becomes smoother. Many people find themselves waking slightly earlier on their own as their internal clock decouples from late-night activity and realigns with light and dark. Neck and eye strain also begin to change. You are no longer hunching over a small slab of glass. Shoulders rounded, head tilted forward. The muscles at the back of your neck and upper back, which have spent years fighting gravity in that position, get a partial reprieve. The tiny muscles that control your eye lens spend more time shifting focus between distant and near objects in the real world instead of locking in at screen distance. These are incremental shifts, not miracles, but over weeks they can reduce tension headaches and visual fatigue. As you move into the second week, the brain begins to stop expecting instant relief from discomfort. Before, any awkward moment in a conversation, any slow line at a store, any micro drop in stimulation could be patched over by a quick glance at a device. that escape route is gone. At first, this magnifies the discomfort. Social anxiety feels sharper when you cannot hide behind a screen. Waiting feels longer, but under the surface, something important happens. Your tolerance for low-level discomfort begins to grow. This matters because many of the processes that support long-term well-being require exactly this skill. Deep work, meaningful conversation, creative thinking, and learning all demand that you stay with mild frustration and boredom long enough for deeper engagement to form. Without constant escape into a device, your brain slowly relearns that it can survive a few minutes of awkward silence, a half hour of difficult reading, or an hour of undistracted work. Each time you stay, you are training attentional control circuits in your prefrontal cortex rather than reinforcing a reflex to flee into stimulation. Emotionally, the second week often brings a shift from scattered anxiety toward a clearer, sometimes uncomfortable awareness of how you actually feel. Without a flood of external stimuli, your mood patterns become more visible. Maybe you notice that your energy drops at the same time every afternoon. Perhaps you realize how much social media used to trigger envy or anger. Or you observe that being present with one person feels strangely intense compared to juggling many shallow interactions through messages. This clarity can be unsettling. But it is precisely what allows regulation to improve. You cannot manage what you constantly mute. By the third week, something else starts to change. Your brain has had enough time without rapid-fire digital cues that deep networks can reassert themselves. The default mode network, which supports self-reflection and mind-wandering, now cycles without being interrupted every few seconds. You might find that walks without a podcast or video become fertile ground for ideas you did not know you had. Conversations stretch further, looping back, exploring side paths that would have been cut short by a quick glance at a notification. Focus begins to feel different as well. When you sit down to read, your attention still wavers, but it no longer panics. Because your brain has gone many days without the promise of easy distraction, it stops automatically searching for it. The task in front of you is no longer constantly compared to the possibility of something more exciting hidden behind an icon. This reduces what cognitive scientists sometimes call attentional switching costs. Each time you resist the impulse to reach for a device, you are strengthening inhibitory control, the ability to not act on a habit simply because it fires. Your stress system also recalibrates. Smart devices tend to compress the entire world into a single space. News, emergencies, tragedies, financial swings, personal messages, work demands, and entertainment all arrive through the same channel. This trains your brain to stay in a semi-vigilant state, always ready for the next potential threat or opportunity. Without that constant stream, your stress hormones can follow more natural curves. There are still pressures, but they unfold in real environments with real cues, not as an endless scroll of detached alerts. Many people report a quieter baseline by this point, a sense that their mind is less jumpy even when life around them is busy. Socially, the third week without devices often exposes how much of your connection used to be ambient rather than intentional. Before, you could see a friend's life through posts and stories without speaking to them. Now, if you want connection, you have to reach out through more direct means or meet in person. This can reduce the quantity of interactions but deepen their quality. Without the ability to curate every moment, interactions become messier, more nuanced, and more realistic. Your brain, which evolved to decode tone of voice, facial expression, and body language, finally gets more of the data it expects. By the final stretch of the month, your relationship to time itself has probably shifted. Smart devices tend to fragment time into small, interchangeable units. A spare minute here, a few seconds there, all filled with quick checks. Without that option, minutes rejoin into longer blocks. Waiting in line might turn into a short planning session in your head. A quiet bus ride might become genuine rest. Even doing nothing, which used to trigger a reflexive reach for the phone, starts to feel like a valid state instead of a problem to fix. Your identity also becomes less entangled with the constant feedback loop of metrics and reactions. Without likes, views, shares, or message counts updating throughout the day, your brain no longer receives numerical verdicts on every thought and image it releases. This can reduce the background hum of performance anxiety. You may notice that you choose clothes, hobbies, or words based slightly more on what feels aligned with your values and slightly less on what will photograph well or land well online. This is rarely a dramatic overnight reset, but the direction of change is clear. Less external scoring, more internal reference. At a biological level, 30 days is enough time for meaningful plastic changes. Synapses that used to fire together around device checking have had a month of disuse. They weaken. New patterns around reading, face-to-face conversation, physical activity, or creative work have had a month of reinforcement. They strengthen. Sleep architecture may show more stable patterns as circadian cues from light and behavior synchronize. Stress responses may peak and fall in more contained ways rather than being continually nudged by alerts. Attention networks have practiced sustaining effort without the promise of constant novelty. None of this means that smart devices are inherently harmful or that returning to them will erase all progress. They are tools, and they can amplify both healthy and unhealthy patterns. What the 30-day break does is reveal the baseline. It shows you what your nervous system feels like without the constant digital layer, how your sleep behaves, how your attention wanders, how your emotions rise and fall, how your relationships function when the easiest escape route is closed. After 30 days, if you choose to bring devices back, you are no longer doing so on autopilot. You can decide, with clearer data from your own biology, which uses enhance your life and which uses quietly drain it. You may reinstall some apps, but leave others behind. You might keep notifications off for anything that is not urgent. You may guard device-free hours around sleep or meals because you have experienced how different your mind feels without them. The real outcome of 30 days without smart devices is not perfection. It is the recovery of choice. The experiment strips away a layer of habit and shows you the raw interaction between your brain and the world. From there, every buzz and every glance at a screen becomes less of a reflex and more of a decision.